My name's Dana Smith. Between Breath and Air is a podcast exploring holistic wellness in our modern world. I've been exploring the intersections of physical and mental health, creativity, spirituality, and social responsibility in the realms of wellness for the past decade of my dual careers as a massage therapist and life coach. And this podcast is an extension of that exploration. Join me and my guests as we look closely at the many facets of embodying whole human wellness in this achingly complex world. So Amy's journey to befriending her body has been illuminating in that it happened in spite of working in the wellness industry for 20 years. She's a trained dancer, and she brings her penchant for expression into the wellness and embodiment work that she does with her clients. She blends her experience in somatics, rehabilitative exercise, trauma-informed movement, Pilates, and expressive arts to give her clients a unique experience that will help them transform their relationships with their bodies. So once she started learning about the nervous system and how our bodies deal with trauma, it became very clear to her that the problem was not in her body. The problem was that she was conditioned to treat herself like a machine that had a moral obligation to be in tip-top condition. She's had some serious unlearning to do, but eventually she began to see that her body wasn't a thing to control. Rather, it was a life partner and a great resource. And I'm so delighted to have Amy join me here today to explore some of this topic of somatic intelligence and integrating that into personal expression. So welcome, Amy. I am so glad that you're here.
Thank you, Dana. It's a real pleasure to be with you in this moment.
Fantastic. Okay, so there's just so much in your work, and I'm really inspired by the worlds that you're weaving together to help people show up as their whole authentic selves through the vehicle of movement. So how did you come to this work? Tell us about your history and just take us on a journey with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I am a kinesthete, so I learn through movement. And we all do to a certain extent, but for me, it's really my language. It's like my first language is movement. And I studied to become a professional dancer and Pilates teacher, and all the things that you mentioned already. And it was just how I understood the world, Then coming to, I'm going to fast forward really to pandemic, right? I had already started bumping up against some of these kind of toxic fitness culture, diet culture things that I think many of us bump up against. And teaching, I actually had been working in an integrative health center for 5 years where I was collaborating with all different kinds of practitioners. And I was getting treatments from them. So working with them on many levels on health and wellness. And here I was living with chronic conditions and with chronic pain. And it was really, really hard to show up to work. I felt like being there was asking me to sort of give up something in myself where I was, like you said before, where I was a problem that I needed to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt really disconnected from myself. And yet here I was teaching people how to, all these fine details about, being in their bodies and how to control and manipulate their bodies in ways to fix their pain. It was a really uncomfortable place to be. And so I knew that I needed to get out. I knew that I needed some sort of break, some sort of separation from that. And I ended up breaking up with exercise. That was sort of a necessary thing for me to do for a period of time. And during pandemic, I also then found myself in the hospital a couple of times. I needed to get I had a couple of organs removed, and it was I was bedridden, and yet I was doing all the right thing. So the work that I do now grew out of this need for me to meet myself where I was at in a way that was completely outside of the options that were given to me, that were outside of fitness and outside of, um, the wellness industrial complex. And I needed a way for me to be able to meet myself on a daily, like, where are you today? And then tomorrow, where are you again and again and again? And that's where the body dialogue coaching came out of.
Beautiful. I very much relate to the conflict of having a body that is hard to be in while facilitating other people to feel better in their bodies. I've lived with a very tricky back injury that's affected me for almost half of my career as a massage therapist. And some days I know that my work is harming me while I am helping people achieve their health goals. And that just feels so out of alignment to some of my values, but it's a bit tricky living in this very pressurized culture that we live in where it's like, well, I can't just not work. I
Yes.
just can't. I can't cancel all my appointments
Yeah.
the morning of
Yeah.
because my back decides to be in a bad mood. So it's been a dance to be in relationship with my body in a new way and interpret feelings of discomfort while also facilitating people on their health journeys as well. So I definitely feel a lot of empathy for the story you just told about having to break up with fitness, because I too have had to, I went through a period of not being able to do my work, and I was very grateful to be able to take some time out, and which I did over the pandemic, and I'm so glad that I got to rejuvenate a bit.
Yeah.
But it's about building relationships with yourself and movement and acceptance and so much self-compassion as you move forward. And I love what you how you position it about showing up and meeting yourself every day in a new way, because when you do have a tricky body that's sometimes hard to befriend because it's screaming at you in uncomfortable ways, every day's different, right? It's like, I think anybody who can relate to a persistent pain syndrome knows that every day is completely different and it's hard to plan your life and
Yeah.
it's hard to show up consistently. So you do have to take it day by day, breath by breath sometimes. It's like, okay, what's here now? And making a choice to be in that conversation with yourself as you move forward.
Hmm.
So it's, I know it's not just you and me. It's cool. We get to talk about this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your experience too. And I want to acknowledge that it's so prevalent in the wellness and the fitness industry that, your teachers also are dealing with things, and nobody has the answers. In fact, one of the biggest lessons that I learned from working at the Integrative Health Center was that even the experts are just guessing,
Yeah.
They're educated guesses, right? They'd spend a long time to figure out which options might be better, but still, it's just a trial and error sort of situation.
That's why we call it a practice. We're just practicing with our best
Yeah.
best effort. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so really your journey was starting in dance and expression, and then you evolved into facilitating people through Pilates and rehabilitative exercise.
That's right.
And then you came home again. It sounds like you broke up with exercise and you came home back to your art. Is that the right
Yeah,
flow? Yeah.
I think so. Of course, there's nuance in there, but I definitely dance felt like the place where I could really be with myself, and my like most authentic self.
Mm.
And so, but it's interesting because it's only just been now, like in the last couple of years, where I'm starting to own the fact that it was interpretive dance, because we were made fun of for so many years. We were the butt of the joke, interpretive dancers. But I think a lot of people just don't really realize how much philosophy and self-inquiry. There's even mathematics and biology. There's so much in this whole round, like umbrella of interpretive dance, that's actually really, really valuable in terms of having relationships and being able to be in relationship with yourself.
It kind of sounded like you were describing abstract art.
Hmm. Very much. They're very
Yeah.
related, right? Like
Yeah.
they kind of came out of the same time period, right? So they were very influenced by each other. And yeah, and so my coming back to it, I'm not so much coming back to the art of it, but to the practice of it.
Can you make a distinction there? What do you mean?
Well, to me, the important, like what attracts me to it isn't the rigor, and it's not how it looks or how it appears or how it's, you know, what it means. Like there's no artistic statement behind it. It's more of a political statement, if anything. To me, it's more about the practice of what happens inside my perception of myself and my world as I'm practicing, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. Yeah, very much. It's like not having a end goal in mind, but doing it for the sake of doing it to
Yeah,
see what you learned on the
exactly.
way. Learn on the way.
Exactly. And in that way, I really believe that everybody is a dancer and has potential to be a dancer when you approach it this way, right? And we were also taught in our training that dance could be anything, right? Like you watch, if you remember that video of the plastic bag that danced back in was it the 90s?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And so, of course, that's an inanimate object, but what about the dance of a finger? It's interesting. Like we ask the question of, where does dance begin and where does it end? And I think that allows for a lot more freedom in where you can explore and where you can let yourself sort of like walk along your own edges a little bit, and let yourself surprise yourself. So that, for me, that's where the richness is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the way that you speak about it is so much about understanding yourself. It's a way of getting to know who you are in this moment
Mhm.
and what that
Mhm.
feels like. Because I think there definitely is a difference between experiencing yourself through thought versus a somatic or physical body experience.
Yeah.
I bet you have lots to say about
Yeah.
about those. Yeah.
Well, I love, I can't remember right now who said it, but maybe it was Christine Caldwell, that there's a difference between the experience of thinking versus actually experiencing something.
Yeah. In my work with coaching as well, a lot of the time I'm teaching people how to experience their world through their senses.
Yeah.
Because we do a lot of work on just, sensory awareness as a way to center themselves and be in the very present moment. And emotions always come up too. And so it's like, how, so many times people ask me, well, how do I feel my emotions? But what does that mean? What am I
Yeah.
supposed to do? And I'm like, well, it's kind of the antithesis.
Yeah.
Like, you're kind of not supposed to do anything with emotions. You're supposed to just let them
Uh,
happen, and
yeah.
there's ways to do that. And the way that you're speaking about movement and kind of walking along the edges of yourselves, like what is that expressive edge?
Yeah.
It feels like it kind of echoes
Yeah.
some of my people's resistance to feeling their emotions.
One thing that's related, that I have really noticed with all of the people I've worked with over 20 years of working with other people's bodies is this disconnect that happens when someone feels pain between where they think their pain is and where the pain actually is.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. And this is one area that I often touch in with people on. Let's locate where this pain is.
Mm-hmm.
And usually there's a really interesting shift that happens when you actually go and track it. It's fascinating. Like oftentimes it just allows for that fear control center in the brain to quiet down a little bit, right? And it just allows for a little bit more curiosity, a little bit more acceptance, a little bit more possibility for what might this pain be here to tell me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you say pain, do you mean physical pain or psychological or emotional or spiritual pain or?
I mean, yes to all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for one thing, our brain doesn't really differentiate between all the different kinds of pain. So in that way, I think it's just all comes in one package, right? And you may recognize it more as one, as different aspects of the pain. This is more spiritual, or it's more, or it's really in my physical body. But they're so married together that I think it's good to keep a pulse on sort of like what your perception is of what realm it is, but at the same time, not let that get you stuck.
Absolutely. I think it's sometimes helpful to point out that there are other types of pain other than, because I think people understand physical pain, and I think many people understand like psychological pain, and just kind of being in a bit of a sticky spot or really painful spot, but opening up the door to just feeling that conflict of emotional or spiritual pain can help people be in a different relationship with it. Like actually
Yeah.
what you're experiencing is perhaps it's pain. Like is that pain, and they begin to converse differently with themselves when that's given an option. It's not just some annoying thing that they're experiencing, but like actually something that's calling for attention, and yeah, that can be a pretty fruitful place to hang out.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Yeah.
What's your take on why self-expression is important?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Um, well, I don't know about you. I have a part in me that has spent a lot of time pleasing and masking a part of myself that I felt was not okay, that it wasn't okay to feel. And in my own personal experience, like that, like it's a very deep wound. It was messages that I got from culture, and it was messages that I got from my family, and it came from all different areas that it wasn't okay as me as a person to um, have the feelings that I was having.
Mm-hmm.
And um, Gabor Mate talks about how our core needs are attachment, authenticity.
Mm-hmm. I have noticed that it creates a lot of turmoil for folks when there isn't that vehicle to express themselves. And often, in my experience and the people that I work, they haven't realized that it's the expression piece that's missing. And it's through our conversations where I'm able to ask them really good questions, and they have to express themselves. They have to explain to me, like what they're experiencing or what the meaning of that is or why that matters to them. And it forces them to like parse out the pieces and untangle this big knot of something's not right.
Yeah.
And that process of expressing themselves verbally often leads to other ways where I'm like, okay, so how else are you expressing yourself? And a lot of people aren't, and there's no reward in culture or society to take time for yourself to do things to let yourself show on the outside what's happening on the inside. Like there's no benefit to anyone else, according to this, neoliberal capitalist shitstorm that we living in, right? So there's a big piece of people not feeling like they can give themselves permission to do that. Because, like, what's the point? I'm going to write really terrible journal entries, or I'm so clumsy I can't move my body, or,
Yeah.
Scribbling on paper just
Yeah.
to scribble there's no worth in that. Why would I bother spending time doing that?
Yeah.
That breaks my heart.
I think ultimately I had this moment where it was a real spiritual reckoning moment where I thought, well, why am I here? If there's a point to me being, it must be to sparkle.
Obviously.
Okay. That was kind of what came out, like I
Yeah.
just I went in really deep, like what is the thing? And that was it. It must be to sparkle a light, right? I asked myself, like, how do I do that? And for me, I noticed that I just kept putting walls in front of myself. I kept shutting down my true, authentic me sparkle. Then I asked myself, like, so when was the time in my life that I felt that sparkle? And it was through somatic practice and through authentic movement and this self-expression.
Beautiful. It's not my go-to, and I think that's perfectly fine. I accept
Yep.
that.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
perfectly fine.
Yep.
Movement is your go-to. I have other go-tos as far as what's easy for me to reach for when I just need to represent what's happening inside me. Um, and it can be a little bit baffling for people who are feeling this pent-up feeling that they're like, I know something needs to happen. Some sort of catharsis is about to occur,
Yeah.
and there needs to be some sort of a channel
Yeah.
um, to let that out. And looks like you're about to say something. Go ahead.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is that if you don't practice it, it's
Yeah.
going to be that much harder for you to let it out, right? And so then it's going to feel like a fire hose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think can be a lot of the fear of doing it in the first place, right? It's like, if I let myself do it, I'm so scared of what's going to happen. And so the gift that I feel that we can give ourselves is that practice of doing, of being
Yeah,
in that way, so that we create more tolerance in our system.
absolutely. And the doing so that we can be with ourselves doesn't have to be a enormous gargantuan practice. I think many of us think that we have to do the big immersion, like, okay, now I have to go to whatever school and quit my career and
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
transform into another way of being. And that's not at all true, because it really can be minutes several times a week or on a weekly basis where you can tap into that part of yourself. But I think the key, like you said, is repeatedly going back to that place so that you can develop a relationship with yourself as an expressive human and understand what it's like to ride those waves of expression. But consistency seems to be key.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if someone was curious about doing this type of work, this
Yeah.
type of like somatic work as exploring themselves, but they're not sure what the first next step would be to accessing that part of themselves, what would you tell them?
I would start by stating the total obvious and
Mm.
saying, I am here, right? And to describe how you, like, what you're feeling and what you're seeing out loud, right? To be able to, and you also using your hands, lay your hands on yourself and just feel what that feels like. I am here.
That's very accessible. Yeah, I like that. I am here. Beautiful. Those can't see, of course, this is a recording, but Amy and I are looking at each other across a screen and we're like pressing ourselves with our hands on our chests and shoulders. And I notice it slows me right down. I'm just like, information coming from my
Yeah.
body and it's
Yeah.
flooding my head and it brings me right into the present. That's what I'm noticing right away. Because your senses don't lie. Like, this is real time. This isn't the past. This isn't the future. This is happening right here, right now. That's pretty cool, right? So
Yeah.
that's even a useful tool for if you're feeling a little flighty or ungrounded, simply feeling the pressure of yourself upon yourself. So simple.
So simple. It's one of my
So
favorite
simple.
tools. Yeah.
That's great. That's fantastic. Oh, this is juicy. Thank you so much, Amy. What's next for you? What's on the horizon for you?
Gee, I have a couple fun things. I have a group that I'm starting. It's called the Unbecoming Practice. And
Mm,
it's a place where people can practice being all of the things that they don't normally practice doing in public. They can practice being messy and complicated and, not knowing, not being an expert, and practice going slow, practice getting worked up. It's just a place where everything is accepted and no one is judging you for it.
whoa. All that sounds like an experience. And of course it's through a movement or somatic lens that you'll
That's right.
be leading people through this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have two different ways to join me. I have a longer group where there'll be also discussion and a chance to connect with other people. And then there's a drop-in shorter format where there's no real check-in. It's just kind of a matter of me leading people through a shorter practice.
Excellent. Where does this occur?
On Zoom. It's all online. All of my work's
Oh,
online. Yeah.
that's amazing. That is a beautiful barrier remover. You don't have to go to a dance studio to experience your body.
No,
How
yeah, totally.
liberating. Just walking through that door, the concept of that, I could see just dry some people right up.
It's true. And it's really cool that you can turn your camera off if you're just feeling like you want to know other people are there, but also that's not a place you want to go today. You can show up in your pajamas or work from bed.
That's fantastic. That's great. And other ways that people can loop into your work. How else can we work with you?
I do have a monthly newsletter, which goes out monthly-ish, which is a little love letter from different parts of your body each
Hmm.
session. Those are pretty lovely. And of course, I have my body dialogue sessions, which are one-on-one opportunities for people to check in with their bodies with consistency, creativity.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So do people book a series of those body dialogue sessions or are they
I
set
do
typically?
have trial sessions for anyone who's
Mhm.
kind of on the fence and just wants to try it out. But yes, most people will sign up for a period of time, and then we work, either weekly or biweekly.
That's very intriguing. Very cool. Oh, it's been such a delight. Thanks so much for your time and presence and generosity of spirit. It's always a delight connecting with you, Amy. And
It's
we
a
will
real
make
treat
sure,
for me too.
yay. We'll be sure to put all of the juicy things that you mentioned into the show notes so people can follow up. And yeah, let's go onward and move into the rest of our day, shall we? Thanks for listening to this episode of Between Breath and Air. If you're keen to support my work, please like and subscribe to this podcast. And if you'd like to be the first to know about other stuff I'm up to, hop over to my website, danasmithwellness.com, and subscribe to my love letter so I can visit your inbox a couple of times per month. So until next time, let me ask you this. During this one wild and precious life, how will you use your time? while your breath is not just air.